Hi everybody, welcome to a pre-April Fool's Day edition of IndyCar. I'm Gordon Ross. Today I'm in the sunny West End of Glasgow and, well, I've got one piece of actual news for you that actually means anything in the middle of the Brexit mess that surrounds us at the moment. Last week I was telling you that the constitution, the new constitution for the Scottish state, written by Dr. Mark McNaught, had been lodged at Holyrood. And it had been lodged there in an effort to get the Holyrood Parliament to debate and to vote on adopting the Constitution. Now this has now been done, and an SNP, MSP, has actually now petitioned the Parliament for this to happen. But I was noticing when I read the more detailed wording of the petition which has been made by the MSP, that the Constitution has been proposed to be debated, possibly amended and voted upon as something which would happen after independence, essentially, because the word that we used were that the enablement of this constitution would be to confirm Scotland's independence. So it would be used to basically legally confirm that Scotland is independent in a way which describes the new state in quite concise terms and sets the boundaries of its powers and who runs it, who's going to be sovereign, and how the elections shall be run and what currency we'll use, and so on and so on, and what our foreign policy would be towards the European Union, for example. So, as well as now having that constitution at Holyrood ready to be debated, the Scottish Government, in its wisdom, has decided at the moment to hold on to it and to only debate it and enact it after independence has been achieved. Now that might well be actually just the right thing to do. There were several possibilities about how the Constitution could be enacted. I know that Mark McNaught originally intended it to form part of the process of becoming independent, and the SNP, to their credit, have actually really thought about that and appear to have listened, because although we're going to be voting for independence, we now know that the Constitution will be debated and will be voted on, and assuming that it's successful, it would be, or a version of it would be, the founding document for the newly emergent, independent, modern Scottish democratic state. Whatever we decide to do with the European Union and whatever we decide to do about the head of state later on would be up to us in an independent state which has already got a government and has very strictly defined rules and restrictions on how the country is to be governed. So that will all be in place. It means that when people do vote for independence, they know that there is not going to be a power vacuum, there's not going to be any guesswork, that all the institutions of government will be there. And not only that, but there is a blueprint, an actual roadmap which takes you from just having voted yes all the way through an 18-month legal journey, if you like, where all the necessary legal steps are put in place and the legislation is created which enables a new state to be formed. And when I say a new state, Scotland exists as a nation, it always has done, but when you're redefining a country and you're giving it a constitution, it does become something different, and it's going to become something much more different from what it is at the moment. That's a very badly worded way of saying it, but basically Scotland is going to become the country that it wants to be, not what it is at the moment. And that's vital, that we now know that that constitution is going to be there for after we have voted to leave. We also know now that the project that Angus Robertson is running in the SNP to poll people, particularly undecided Scottish voters, on what they now feel about independence, having seen the chaos and the madness of Brexit, how they now feel about considering or reconsidering independence as a better option. And all of the poll results appear to point to somewhere in the region of 63% of all the Scots polled, and this is 2,000 people across the country, of various ages, ranging from 16 all the way up into their retirement. And 63% of those have now said that they believe Scotland will become an independent country. Now, they're not saying it should be, they're not saying that that's what they're going to vote for, but they're saying they believe it will become an independent country. And also, more details in the polls suggest that more undecided voters have now started to reconsider, have now said that they will consider voting for independence, whereas before they might not. So the indications are that it's not just Brexit which is pushing people towards independence, it's also the positive aspects. And we need to remember that when we're talking to people, that the Constitution guarantees certain things for voters who do decide to change their minds. And most particularly, I would draw your attention to things like pensions and benefits. Those would be guaranteed under the Constitution. The rights, human rights to certain things like a home, to gas and electricity, affordable food, all the rest of that, these will all be enshrined in the Constitution as well. Nobody should be destitute in this new state. So, it's good news in that respect, but at the moment it's also very bad news for Brexit at the moment. We also know this week that Dominic Grieve, a Tory MP in England, has been subjected to a confidence vote in his own constituency, and he has lost it, which probably means that he's going to be deselected, and perhaps there will be a new candidate put forward for that particular ward. But on the back of that as well, Mrs May is now in a cleft stick. It looks very unlikely that she might be allowed to put her deal for a fourth time to Parliament, although you never know. We're so far down the rabbit hole that this, almost through the looking glass politics that they have in Westminster at the moment, anything could and probably will happen. The Labour Party appears to be gearing up for a general election. They're pushing for that. They're probably going to press for a vote of no confidence in Mrs May and the government, in which case, if May loses that, then Labour would force the Tories into calling another general election. But it's generally thought at the moment, especially by senior Tory advisors, that a general election would make things worse. Labour has indicated that they would still largely carry out Brexit. They haven't said exactly how they would do that. The thinking at the moment is there would be some kind of customs union or equivalent, and they would stay in the single market somehow or other. None of this has been specified. So we'd be basically back to square one with Labour, so nothing really is going to change. Now, all of this you might think is going to hold up independence, but on the contrary, the continuing chaos, if it keeps continuing month after month after month, paralysing the entire country, then the case for becoming independent is actually strengthened by that. And I think if it's... I know that the First Minister was asking for clarity, and she was waiting for clarity on what would happen with Brexit. The clarity is probably that the chaos will continue for an indefinitely long period of time. But the European Union won't countenance that. And whatever else happens, in 10 days' time, the European Union will decide whether the UK is to be permitted to take part in the European Union's parliamentary elections. Now, if the UK does take part in them, this will be vitally important for Scotland's interest, because the SNP believes that they will hang on to all their MEPs and possibly even gain a few more, maybe even kick out people like David Coburn, who nobody in Scotland likes and almost nobody voted for here. That would be terrific. But on the other hand, it would still continue the row over Brexit. It would continue for years to come, probably, because if we are allowed to take part in these European elections, then we would de facto have to be given at least a couple of years of a delay to Brexit. They would have to put it on ice again for another couple of years, and the chaos in the UK would continue, the paralysis would continue, the rioting would get worse. We've already seen some violence around Westminster in the past 2 days. It's not been severe. So far people have been fairly good-natured, but they are angry, and they're going to get angrier as the delays drag on and on and on, and Mrs May continues with this stubborn pig-headedness to try and force through this deal that nobody actually wants. So as I say, the indications look good for independence, regardless of whether Brexit goes on forever or not. If Brexit's going to go on for the next 2 years, then I think Nicola has all the clarity she needs to decide to call the new independence vote. However it's done doesn't matter. It could be done through the general election, and that actually is probably, at the moment, the thing which is most likely to happen. So we could end up seeing a general election in Scotland which is basically a straight out fight between the SNP and every other UK party in Scotland, which is mostly going to be the Tories, because Labour is going to get wiped out in the general election. The polls all show that. The Tories are going to be basically down to 1 MP if they're lucky, the Lib Dems the same 1 MP, so it's going to be a repeat, or in fact a slightly worse defeat for the UK parties than they had in 2015. So I think the case looks good, it's winnable. I believe the Scottish people can make a mandate for independence through this general election and win it, and then use the constitution to create the new state and declare independence about 18 months afterwards. That's where things lie at the moment. That's as far as I understand the situation to be. If anything changes, of course, I'll bring you that news as soon as I get it. Anyway, I have to go and do some more real work, but I'll also have editions of IndyCar throughout the week, and of course on Thursday you'll see me on Scotland at 7 on Broadcasting Scotland. Anyway, I'll see you later on. Have a good day, and remember, it's April Fool's Day tomorrow, okay? So remember, the stuff that you see in the media tomorrow, take it with a big pinch of salt. See you later. Bye for now.